What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Pro v Pro. We got a good one for you guys this week. Some Genesis Invitational recap, Mexico Open, some early thoughts there. Tiger Woods, obviously, we got to discuss where Tiger's at this point in the season. Incredible win from Hideki Matsuyama. Zalatoris made a fantastic return from injury, and we got plenty to talk about with his performance. He went through some difficult things this weekend as well. Justin, how you feeling this week?
I'm good, man. It's fun to watch a golf tournament like that. I think for a change, you got to hit good shots. I think you kind of see it with the people that come to the top of the leaderboard we talk about it all the time of these guys that have this special talent. And you saw that in that leaderboard, Matsuyama, Zalatoris, it's just impressive to see the shots. Now, I think there's probably some changes that need to be made to a couple of holes. I mean, you saw, what was it, 4 or whatever, that they couldn't even hit it on the green. It's like 230.
16% of the field hit that green. It was something like the lowest of all time. And the point that has been made by a lot of tour players, I think this week it was Adam Schenk who talked about it more specifically, where he said the problem with the hole isn't how difficult it is, it's that it doesn't reward good shots, right? Like the best shots, the towering, purely struck 4-iron that comes into the green, lands on the very front edge, still goes through the back, just as if you bladed a hybrid or something like that. So I think I'm in agreement there. Something has to be done just to make it reward good shots. But I also don't want them to go to the extreme where suddenly it's not a difficult hole anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know. I mean, even I would think that just make that hole 200 yards or 190 and keep everything the same would probably solve that problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be 230 or whatever. I mean, I was watching and Zalatoris hit one in there, and everybody knows how good he hits it. And it kind of hits like this high draw in there, and it bounces over the green. And so List after him hits this like huge high spinny cut that like pitches 1 inch on the green and still goes over the back. And I was just like, how in the world? Like, what are they supposed to do?
Exactly. And it seems to me like part of it is that the hole was designed for players to take on the risk that the hole provides, where you try to hit like a low draw where it lands well short right of the green, comes on and takes the slope all the way down to the left. But players are just like, I'm not going to hit that shot, because if I don't hit that shot perfectly, now I have an impossible bunker shot I'm making 4 at best. I'll just hit it over the green and try to chip on, get up and down for my par. So I think part of it is that players are just too smart now, where what the architect had in mind doesn't matter anymore, right? It used to be like people would just play the hole the way the architect of the golf course intended. And now they're like, no, I'm just doing what's best for the score. And that leaves some holes like this where it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense anymore.
And you see that with people hitting it down other fairways and stuff like that. I mean, that's exactly to the point of like, yeah, everybody now is going to look at a golf course and decide what's gives them the best chance to shoot low numbers. And I'll even go as far as like to see that in my home golf course now. I played Q school there 15 years ago, way before I ever thought I would live up here. And there's a hole that number 12 at our course that now I look at it and I just try to hit it over the corner. And if I'm in a bunker or whatever, I've got 80 yards. Whereas when we went to Q school, everybody just hit 3-wood out to the right and then had 7-iron into the green. And nobody does that anymore. It's just not a – so to your point, yeah, I think everybody's just kind of over we're going to do what we're supposed to. We're just going to do whatever gives us the best opportunity to win.
And when you're competing for $4 million, that's the right choice to make.
Did you have any idea they showed that check for $4 million? And I was like, oh my God. Well,
yes, that was the effect of adding a cut, because they're all the same person. So if you have a little bit less to hand out to the bottom of the field, you have a little bit more to hand out to the top. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see more cuts just because guys are like, you know what? That $4 million check looks a lot better than 3.6.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's just something. Yeah, I mean, not the 3.6 million is still a lot of money, but
unfortunately, we have to talk some about Tiger and what a disappointing week it was. I think, considering the fact that he had to withdraw in the middle of a round, it's probably best case scenario that it turned out it was from illness and dehydration rather than a re-injury. Like, my first thought was I had seen him. He talked about like having back spasms at the end of his first round, which, by the way, for anyone who isn't familiar with how back spasms can originate, dehydration is like number one on the list, right? Like my dad gets back spasms all the time when he's driving, and he used to like pull over and get a lacrosse ball out and start massaging it away. It's just like, no, just drink a Gatorade or a water, and then it doesn't get them anymore. Dehydration gives back spasms. So it's not at all surprising to then see he actually had to withdraw from dehydration in day 2. Maybe Tiger needs a little bit of a lesson on how hydration can relate to all of his injuries. But
I would, so this is my point to that is, like, I heard all that. Are we naive enough to think that one of the most athletic golfers to ever play the game doesn't drink enough water, or doesn't, I mean, like, at what point is that, hey, this is my easiest excuse out of here, when we don't really know the root problem of, because I was actually pretty impressed by the way he struck the golf ball. I thought he was he looked like he could play or be in form. I just have a hard time believing that you're going to tell me that one of the best athletes in the world who's making a return to the game to get ready for Augusta is just all of a sudden going to be dehydrated. I mean, he knows how to take care of his body.
So I agree, and I think this is a fair question, but I also think it's important to point out that when you haven't played under that type of stress in a long time, because we talk about all the time about like how different it is to be in a competitive setting, in a tournament setting, versus just practicing. And it's not just more difficult to actually perform well, but it's also more difficult on your body. Like I have this, it's called a Whoop. A lot of players wear, like, it's the thing that Justin Thomas wears. It measures cardiovascular strain. I was amazed when I first got this, how much higher the strain is in a tournament round. Even if a tournament round in a cart is like walking 36 holes of just regular no tournament golf. It's unbelievable how much more of an impact it has on your body, just dealing with the mental aspect of it while you're also dealing with the physical aspect of it. So the other thing I'd say about dehydration is it's one of those things that it kind of sneaks up at you at times, where you don't necessarily realize you're dehydrated until you are. And then once you are, it's like infinitely more difficult to get undehydrated, to get rehydrated, than it would be to just maintain hydration ahead of time. So it's not quite as simple as he's an elite athlete who should know how to hydrate.
I mean, he's played millions of golf tournament rounds, and just I don't know. I just felt, I still feel like, and that there's an underlying issue here that maybe we don't know about, and I don't know what that is. I just don't feel like that was the end all be all of, hey, I'm dehydrated, I'm just going to WD. Like, and that may be just me being a skeptic. I don't know.
I think we'll get an answer to this. Because the next question I was going to ask is, when do we see him next? Like, it sounded like his original plan was probably to play the Players. He talked about how the schedule sets up perfectly to play basically once a month, where the best events are kind of a month apart from one another. So if we don't see him a month from now at any point in time, if like the next time we see him is at the Masters, then I'd be more inclined to agree with you. If it was just dehydration, then I see no reason why we wouldn't see him, play the schedule that he kind of hinted at playing, in which case I think it would be like all systems go. It really would be a good sign, especially if he commits soon to the Players or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. And like I said, I don't know for sure. This isn't like something that I have like any kind of info on. I kind of give I'm going to be more of a critic to the best of the best than I am going to be if somebody like me goes out and is dehydrated and has back spasm, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not exactly a finely tuned athlete on the brink of greatness. So like, and so I don't know the answer. And then did you get involved in all the Jordan Spieth debate about the sign-in scorecard? And do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I think people probably don't want to hear this, but I think it's 100% necessary that players keep each other's scores. And I would want no part of, like, for example, imagine if you were in a group with Patrick Reed, you're not in charge of his score, some volunteer is. How worried are you that the volunteer somehow gets tricked into putting a 4 down on a hole that Reed made 5? And at the end of the round, like, you have to spend the entire round babysitting the volunteer keeping track of his score. That's just not something that I want to be a part of.
Well, what's funny is we're going to end up in the same place, but get there a different way, right? That's just kind of the way we usually do it. But it's your job.
Mm-hmm.
Hideki Matsuyama just made $4 million to win a golf tournament. It's your job to write down a score and make sure that your score and their score is correct. Like, we're not asking you to, mid-round run a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally writing down a score that you get paid a lot of money to do.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't seem like, and this is coming, I think most people that argue, it's, we shouldn't do this with the times now. We have too much technology, blah, blah, blah. They all want to complain about Shot Tracker. None of them have ever played a professional golf tournament. As far as me, when I write down scores, if I told you there wasn't times that I went to the scoring tent and my scorecard was completely blank, I'd be lying. But it takes 10 seconds to go back and rethink about every hole and what you made and what somebody else made. So I try not to do, obviously, I at least try to write them down every 3 holes, or if I have a caddy, have the caddy just write them down or whatever. There's so many options, right?
Mm-hmm. We even heard, I forget who mentioned it, but someone told the story of what Spieth was on like the 17th tee box or something, where there was a wait on a par 3, some other tournament, and he had to write down all 16 scores previously because he hadn't written the thing down yet during that day. So yeah, if you put yourself behind the 8 ball like that, you're much more likely to make a mistake. But the other argument that I saw on Twitter that I thought was a really good one, I wish I remembered who said this, because I'd love to give them credit for it. Because again, it's something that I hadn't even thought of, but like, there's also an element of, I want to make sure that my score is right when I'm playing in a tournament. And the volunteers, so for anyone who isn't like fully aware of this, the reason why the broadcast always knows what a player is at is because they're getting it from the tour's website, which is all done through the ShotLink system, volunteer scores with each group, and volunteer ShotLink, volunteers. So mistakes are made, and they're made quite often, where usually they're fixed because a volunteer will go up to, Spieth's caddy and say, hey, what did Jordan have that last hole? I was kind of unaware. So you're going to get that sort of thing anyway. And the other aspect of that is, like, how many times have you been following one of your players during an event and they finish the round, especially if it's at a course where, the ShotLink has been pretty unreliable to that point, or maybe they don't even have ShotLink on that golf course, and the round finishes and all of a sudden the score changes. It's like, what the hell? And it's because the players reported that on the 4th hole, they had an extra stroke that for the next 3 hours, nobody else knew about. So you need that there. It has to be the player's responsibility. I know people don't want that to be the case, but it's just true.
And then the same people, it drives me nuts, is the same people will be like, I can't believe they can't get ShotLink right. Look, the ball goes backwards here, and they somehow make a hole-in-one on a par 4, and now you want to give them more responsibility of keeping the player's score and making that official. Mm-hmm. Like, come on, man. Like, and then they're like, well, you could just go back and watch video. You know how many hours of coverage you'd have to go back and watch video to see every single player and what they – it's just an absolutely ridiculous something that doesn't need to be changed.
Also, can you imagine, like, people complain all the time, rightfully so, myself included, about how bad the coverage is in terms of not showing enough golfers, not showing enough shots. And, like, yes, theoretically, they could put a camera on every hole, but guys are going to be way out of position where the camera can't see them. They can't know. Like, if Patrick Reed is off the board behind some trees, the camera can't see him, and he takes 2 shots to get out of that spot back to the fairway, you think he's writing down both? You think a volunteer's catching that it's both? Not a chance.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Well, I hope they don't do anything, but you know how the PGA Tour works, right? They don't listen to the things they need to listen to, and they're going to probably change something for something as idiotic as this. So,
the only other question I have here is, how many of the people that were complaining about this for Spieth, how many of them were only as outraged as they were and asking for a change because they either had a bet on him or they had him on DraftKings or their favorite player? What do you think there?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Everybody, I had a buddy text me. He's like, I can't believe Spieth, blah, blah, like, mad. What are you doing? And he's like, yeah, I had a top 10 bet on Spieth. And I was like, yeah, there you go. So it's
100%.
great.
Yeah, it's funny how like opinions now are just based on what did you bet or what did you want the outcome to be. That's what you think the rule should be going forward, and not actually evaluating what the rule is.
Yeah, no doubt. So yeah, we'll see what. Hopefully they don't do anything and they just spend their time, making other things better. But
before we get to the really good stories in Zalatoris and Hideki, I want to ask Cantlay. We've seen stats now going around basically all of Twitter, all of the internet about just how much better he's been in round 1 than in rounds 2 through 4, and just how much worse he's been in round 4 than in any other round of the season. How much of that do you think is just the randomness of golf in a small sample versus there's something he's struggling with mentally when it comes to trying to close the door after these hot starts?
Well, we talk about this a lot, right? About winners win. They have to know how to win. And he just, to me, like, he wins because he's just that good, not because he has any killer instinct. So if he had that, he just doesn't have a killer instinct of, hey, I'm going to go shoot a low number and step on their throat. And I'm not saying he's not trying, or if he's trying too hard, or whatever the answer is there. It's just the fact of the matter is you can just, for me, you just don't feel like he has it. You don't look at him and say, all right, this guy, is going to come for somebody else's throat. You just don't see that in anything he does. His mannerisms, is just the way he carries himself.
It's an interesting point because if you remember back in like 2021 and 2022, the narrative around him was when he gets in contention, he's just going to make the putt to win it. Like there's no question when he has a 15-footer that he needs to make to help him win the golf tournament, whether it's on 18, 12, whatever, he's going to make it. Some of our perceptions just are about what has happened recently. Now he's not getting it done, and the perception is that he doesn't have what it takes to win. I think I'm with you in what you said initially there, which is like he wins because he's really good. And because he's really good, he's probably going to win again in the future and have no problem closing the door. And all of this noise, like the fact that he was converting almost every single opportunity in 21 and 22, and now he's not converting them, that's just the noise around it. He's just a good player. He's going to win sometimes. He does, by the way, have a lower chance to win in our models and our simulations on a week-to-week basis than his talent would suggest, but that's because he's one of the more consistent players event to event. So it's just hard for him to reach the ceiling because of his low volatility nature that is sometimes required to win, especially in these signature events.
And what's impressive to me about him is that, like, a couple of weeks ago, I think at Pebble or I don't know, he was like hitting snap hooks and hitting terrible iron shots and just he had no control of his game. And, for most like professionals, most guys on tour, it usually takes a couple of weeks, to figure all that out. And he seemed to just figure it out right away and get back to, being in contention, which is really, really impressive.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that, you have to look at when a player has a really hot start to a tournament, why did they start really hot? And in this one, it was a lot because he was just draining putt after putt and long putt. That's a lot harder to sustain throughout an entire event. And actually, it brings us right to Zalatoris, because Zalatoris also had one of those starts where his Thursday round was a great round, but it was only great because he made I think it was on holes 5 through 7, something like that. He made 3 consecutive, and maybe even been holes 4 through 7 where he made 4 consecutive either putts from 25 plus feet or chips off the green at like 35 feet. It was just an unbelievable stretch. So he gets off to this incredible start just because he makes 4 more bombs than you would expect him to make. And then in round 2, he has the hole-in-one. And so through 2 rounds, it's like he doesn't deserve to be anywhere near the position that he actually was on the leaderboard. To his credit, he then played outstanding golf throughout the weekend, especially on Sunday. So that was really great to see from Zalatoris bouncing back from this injury. It seems like he's just getting better and better every event. It's
funny because you got to the same point that I was going to make. What was really impressive is the weekend, because like you said, he kind of faked it for 2 rounds. And then the last round, it was no longer just faking it. Like, he hit some incredible golf shots. And I think that the harder the golf course, the more, especially the more firm you make the greens, the better he's going to be. And I was pretty impressed with, he made a lot of putts, but I was impressed with his putting in general. Like, it didn't look yippy. It looked like the putter was kind of just swinging a little bit more free. Man, if that's a sign of things to come, he's winning a major this year, in my opinion.
I don't know if you saw many of his putts, but one of the things that I noticed about it was like every single short putt came off the toe still, but it wasn't the jagged takeaway that he used to have with the shorter putter. And I almost think that where he was hitting it on the putter, yes, it was on the toe, but it almost seemed to me like it was, number one, more consistent in terms of where on the toe he was hitting it. Like, it's always there. It's not, oh, he hit it on the sweet spot this time and now he missed out on the toe. It's almost like he's practicing and purposely hitting it there because he just knows, look, that's going to be my miss. Why don't I just hit it there always? And that way I can, predict how it's going to come off the face.
Have you ever messed around with one of those putters? Have you ever used one, the lab putter?
I have not, and I can't imagine myself doing so.
So I actually went and got fitted for one. They're actually really good. If you can get over the look of it, like it definitely, the look is a little bit different. It makes you lean the handle, which is why it doesn't work out for me because I'm more neutral. But you have to lean the handle a little bit. The technology is awesome. Like, it really, and I think that's why that putter is so good for him, because the toe hit is very stable in that putter. So that's kind of the design, right? Is the face doesn't turn or flex, so to speak, with the mishits. So I'm going to guess that was probably Josh Gregory's doing, which would make sense. I mean, pretty sure that's who he works with a short game with here in Dallas. So he's one of the best in the business. But yeah, I like it. I mean, if his speed was good, his ball was. You hear us talk a lot about your ball if you're putting really good, your ball's always going in the hole at the same speed, whether it's an uphill, downhill, doesn't matter. And I was really impressed by that.
I happen to have a highlighter and a golf ball here with me, just by chance. That's the life of a golfer. So I think this concept of the stable toe is a really interesting one, and probably one that we should elaborate on. So let's do a little bit of a demonstration here. Most putters, if you hit it on the toe, let's make sure this is in the screen. What happens to the putter face is it's going to open like this a little bit, and now as it pushes, it's pushing the ball offline. A stable toe means when you make contact here, the putter stays, the ball still goes online. So that when Justin's talking about how this putter is more stable around the toe, that's what that means. And that's why when you saw the roll of the ball off of Zalatoris' putter, it looked so much better this week, even though he was consistently hitting it off the toe.
Yeah, it was good. And he's obviously working on it. I was worried about the back problems, maybe not allowing him to practice his putting as much as he would like, but he's done a really good job with his golf swing. He's done a really good job of making sure that back doesn't hinder his career.
They also made that point on the broadcast, and I think that's another reason why it's really helped him to go to this putter, because when you have the longer putter, you're in a more upright position, which is a lot easier on your back, which makes it easier to practice. I think it was Kisner, too, by the way, who was talking about Scheffler and saying, look, when he's chipping, he's in a more upright position than he is putting. He's obviously in a more upright position in his ball striking. One fix for him could be maybe not going to the super long putter, but just either adjusting his posture. Maybe it's, adding 2 inches to the putter, something to get him in a more similar posture to the way he chips and hits his longer game clubs. Just would potentially help him. I think yet another example of Kisner just being a really, really refreshing voice on broadcast.
I don't know. I mean, I used to putt with a 32-inch putter, and I'm up to a 34-inch putter now, probably for the same reason. I can't practice like I used to be able to stand out there for hours upon hours. So, yeah,
nor do we have the desire to.
Yeah, well, that's a different story.
Not in our career that we're playing for.
Yeah,
you're not going to see me grinding 6 hours a day on the practice screens and things like that.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and obviously filled with emotion for Zalatoris and the interview. I mean, that's got to be a really hard interview. We talked a little bit. I don't think anybody really knows what happened or anything more elaborate except for that he lost a family member.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, we always laugh, beware the injured golfer, right? Because their mind's not on the golf.
Mm-hmm.
So that probably had something, to do with how he played. He probably wasn't really worried about golf. He was more worried about, just taking care of himself and his family and stuff like that. So it's definitely unfortunate. I'm going to, he gets to go home for a week and hopefully, figure out everything. And it's just it's a tough situation.
Yeah. It's an interesting one too, because you have this like perfect juxtaposition of wanting to analyze how he played, where his game's at for where it's going to go forward, with also just like acknowledging what an incredible story this was, how difficult it must have been for him to focus in. Because like on the one hand, yeah, it can help you to have your mind distracted and to not be overanalyzing every shot that you hit. But then you also get into these pressure situations where you have to get your focus all the way dialed into what you're doing. It seemed like he was able to really use this tragedy in his family to not necessarily like help him focus, but he talked about how, quote, like she was with him all week. And so that was just really cool to see from him. From a golf perspective, he's obviously playing really well now. We're seeing improvements with the putter. We're also seeing, by the way, a pretty big improvement over the last 3 events, at least around the green, which, that's like putting. That's something that historically he has struggled with at times. And those struggles haven't been as well known and as discussed as his putting woes, because it doesn't look as ugly when he chips poorly as it has historically when he putts poorly. Perhaps the thing to me that is most interesting is that his distance advantage is pretty much gone. He actually lost 4 yards to this Genesis field, gained 0 at the Farmers, and only gained 2 yards per round at the American Express. That week, obviously one of the rounds had no shot link, but historically he's been someone who gains around 10 to 15 yards against the average field. So this is a pretty interesting development. How important do you think it'll be for him to get that distance back come major time, or can he just compete at this distance as long as the putting and the short game continues to show this kind of improvement?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think he's a rare case where he hits his mid and long iron so good that he's not for a lot of people, you need the short, everybody, the shorter the club, the more birdies you're going to make. But he has the ability to hit shots that a lot of other people can't with mid and long irons. And I think for him, it's just going to come down to putting. I mean, and the harder the golf course, it's better. It's crazy that we're calling that a hard golf course and it still took 19 under to win. This golf course is hard. Let's go shoot 20 under. But I can definitely see places like this is a good golf course for him. And I think the firmer you get the greens, the better it's for him too. So
I think you make a phenomenal point on the mid irons there. In the last 2 years, only Scotty Scheffler has gained more strokes from 150 to 200 per shot. Scotty's at 0.072, Zalatoris 0.071, Morikawa is third at 0.057. So you get an indication there of just how elite he is from that range. So I'm with you. I think that he can probably survive a distance shortage, if you will, more so than the average player would. But I also think that we're still pretty early in his recovery. Maybe speed is the last thing that comes back for him, but there's absolutely a chance that it comes back. And if it does, that could mean some really phenomenal things, where if the speed is there and he's a little bit improved on and around the greens, like that's the type of thing that now you expect to see him at the top of the leaderboards in majors.
For sure. And so while we're talking about elite, I think we just need to go right into the performance we saw on Sunday with Hideki and how impressive it really was.
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. Tee to green. It was phenomenal to see him make putts. I said during Sunday, like I think he was going up the 18th hole or something like that. That's one of the best rounds of golf that's ever been played. I don't know if you think it was that good or where you stand there, but I was just blown away the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, not that the Genesis isn't a big golf tournament, but it's not as popular as maybe, some of the others. So some people probably don't view it that way. So if you take away like, your huge rounds in majors, your really good rounds in majors, they might get a little more attention. But I think this yesterday was just incredible. Complete control of your golf ball. I mean, missed it in the spots he was supposed to miss it when he did. He chips it unbelievable. And just hitting really good shot after really good shot.
Yeah, I just the crazy thing too is I don't know if you heard him after the round, but during his interview, he said it felt to him like he shot 3 over, which anyone who knows Hideki knows that like one of the most fun things about watching him is you're almost guaranteed to get an instance of he, on a tee shot, he finishes with a one-hand finish and it's striped down the middle. Or on a par 3, he finishes with a one-hand finish. The ball ends up 8 feet from the pin high. It's just what he does. It's like when he's on, I think when he's on, he expects so much from his game that he expects perfection on every single shot, every single swing. And so when you get a full round like this, where he says like throughout the entire round, it felt like he was so much worse than his actual score. To me, that says he knows that his game is just in a phenomenal place right now.
And he definitely exaggerates, right, a little bit. I mean, that's where a lot of that comes from. So I'm sure he knew he didn't shoot 75. I think sometimes we talk about this with elite golfers, right? That how comfortable can you be being uncomfortable? And when you get close to a leaderboard and you have a really low round go, or in this case, both, like how comfortable are you in that situation? Because you are going to be uncomfortable no matter what. There is going to be adrenaline. You are going to feel something. It's just how are you wired? Can you handle that spot?
And I think where there's some truth in what he was saying about, feeling like he didn't play anywhere near that well, is that he didn't drive the ball super well. He only gained 0.2 strokes in that final round. He gained a little under 2.5 with approach, but 95% of that came on 15 and 16, where he hit the ball inside of a foot. So for the most part, he was just dominant around the greens, including a chip in, maybe even 2 chip ins. I can't quite remember, but just every single time that he had a difficult shot around the green, he hit a phenomenal one. He also putted really well, gaining almost 2.5 strokes putting in this final round. One of the more complete performances. And I think it also gets to this idea that like Hideki can dominate a golf course with his short game like almost nobody else has been able to in the history of golf. You think about his win at the Masters. He was phenomenal around the greens. Just it's like perfect mix of creativity and artistry with flawless mechanics. You just don't see that a whole lot in golf. Hideki has that around the greens. And even in this event, he gained, what was the actual number? Let me look this up again.
It literally
1.6 strokes per round around the green. Most players don't even have a chance to gain that much in a single round, let alone a single event per round. Like it's unbelievably good short game action.
Well, it just seems like every time I would like pull up the PGA Tour app and click on his name, Hideki Matsuyama from off the green chip in, like, I mean, it just was like, over and over and over. Just he chipped it. Was he chipped in on 2 maybe?
And I think so. Like you can on Data Golf, you can go pretty much round by round and shot by shot within each round. And he had chip-ins, and that's certainly part of why he was able to gain so much per round. But the other reason is that he just wasn't making mistakes around the green. Like every single chance he had to gain strokes around the green, he did so. Just unbelievable consistency with the chipping. Never losing strokes. You can't gain 1.6 purely from the luck of chipping in. You also have to, like basically the ones that didn't go in still had a chance to go in because he was just that damn good around the greens. And I think it gets to the point where sometimes when a player chips in a few times, it is pure luck. In this instance, I think he was chipping in because every single chip was scaring the hole and some were just bound to fall.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to see guys like him play really good on courses like this where every par 5 is kind of reachable, but it's kind of hard to hit it on the surface because of the slopey greens and stuff. So you have to chip it really good, right? Yep. And so that's where, then you throw in the mix of number 10 where everybody – I would love to see the stats, but does anybody lay up there anymore?
Justin Thomas does. Not every round, I don't think, but he does some of the time.
Certain pins. There's just not many. I think pretty much the way Justin Thomas played, I probably wouldn't pay too much attention to what he was doing.
Right.
Yeah, just when everybody thought he was back, and then Justin Thomas and Chalk sure didn't work out very good. Is that the Tiger effect? Like he wants to beat Tiger so bad that he just struggles?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it is one I want to dive into. But before we do, I just want to point out Matsuyama played number 10 2 under this week, and he did so by gaining 0.6 strokes with his chip shot on 10 on the first round and 0.3 the 10th in the fourth round. Like he did exactly what you would expect. He performed really well on that hole because he set himself up to gain strokes with his short game, and he did exactly that.
Yeah, and he knows he doesn't. I think it allows him to, when he's playing really good, it allows him to just be more aggressive because he's not worried about where his ball ends up. He's pretty positive that he can get it up and down from anywhere.
Yeah, which takes pressure off of the first shot too, right? Like if you don't feel like you have to hit it into the perfect spot where you can just putt from off the green, if you can hit it into that back bunker, if you can hit it through into that rough, if you can hit it short or even a little bit left and have, a full pitch shot instead of just a little chip and run or a putt, just gives you all the freedom in the world to make a good swing.
Yeah, and not just that, but he uses it as a weapon where he's got to, he feels like if he does miss the green, he can chip it in. So he's not like, oh, if I hit it here, not only is he not worried about making a bogey, he's worried, he thinks that he could make it.
So we're going to do something fun here on this show. Obviously, the Mexico Open, not the biggest event, not the one that people are going to care the most about. So we're going to have some fun here. We're going to draft our top 10 of the group of players that when they're on, you take their game over anybody else in the world. And obviously Hideki's performance this week suggests he probably will be here. So Justin, I'll give you the first pick. Let's each pick 3 to 5 guys and just see what kind of a list we end up with here.
So the big deal for me here is the most upside, right? It's not just so like that. To me, the easiest pick here would be like a Scheffler. I think that I personally would rather take as far as pure upside. I think I prefer Rory over Scheffler just for the fact that he doesn't have the same putting woes, and he can hit every shot Scheffler can. And when his I just have a hard time believing that anybody's A game is better than Rory's.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement. He'd be my first pick as well. And the reason being is that he can hit shots that nobody else in the world can hit. Like I remember I was at Augusta last year for the practice round, and on number 11, he had probably 210 to the green. He's behind one of those trees. He had to hit an iron twice as high as any golf ball that I have ever hit. And he did it perfectly to like 4 feet. Nobody else can do that. No one else can lift a long iron that quickly, that high into the air with spin, with control. It was probably also had to be like a 10-yard draw, something like that. He just hits shots that nobody else in the world can hit. And because of that, I think to your point, like his ceiling is just at a level that no one else can reach.
And you saw like he was struggling this week, not playing very good. And then he gets to that par 5 where like a lot of people are, I don't know. I mean, they're just kind of hitting it at the left side of the green or whatever, that pin's front right. And he just hits this like 5 iron from 230 through the moon that lands a foot and doesn't go anywhere. Like those are the shots that I think are the most amazing. Like
after a 348-yard drive, by the way.
Yeah, just no problem. Like
he does things that are on another planet.
Yeah, so that I think he would be my one. So that leaves you with the second. Who would you go with next?
I am going to go Scotty here, and I think to to this conversation, it's like we're talking about when they're on. So we're talking about when he's actually making some putts. And we know how much he can separate with his ball striking. He's been the best ball striker in the world for 2 years. He's putting up Tiger Woods-like numbers with the ball striking. All he needs to do is make some putts. Well, when he's on, he's making putts. I think we saw a glimpse of it at the WM Open when all of a sudden he was making like everything from 8 to 20 feet. And it's like, holy cow, he just went from, 35th to first in the first hour that they were on television.
A 6-hole stretch.
So when he's doing that, it's almost unlike anybody else. And so he's going to be my first pick there.
Yeah, and I'm definitely in agreement. I think your best point there is he's just head and shoulders better than everybody tee to green.
Yeah.
And it's not. It continues to show. There's no faking what he's doing, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Who's your next pick? I think I know who it is, but
I mean, he doesn't play on the PGA Tour, if that helps. Yeah. It's pretty simple. I think that these three are the top three players in the world. I think you could make an argument to put them in any order, but Rahm is got to go here. I mean, there's an argument for Rahm's A game being as good as Rory and Scheffler when he's going. I'm surprised. I'm really, really interested to see how he plays in the majors this year. He hasn't been as dominant as I thought he would be. And I don't know if they're just getting used to the scenery over there and just the difference. Mm-hmm. But he's special. I mean, when he gets going, and we just had the conversation about that killer instinct, and I believe that might be what makes him at times even better than Rory and Scotty.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this call. I gave him some real thought at number 2. He's got perhaps the most complete game of the top 3, which I think also helps because, to reach like the ceiling performance of being quote unquote on, there are multiple ways you can do it. You can do it like Scotty does sometimes, where he just gets so unconscious with the irons that he's never going to have to chip the ball. And, every hole is a 10 to 15 foot birdie putt, but you can also do it by gaining everywhere. And, that could mean that you have license to go after every pin because you know that if you miss the green, even if you're short-sighted, you're going to be able to chip it to 6 feet and make the putt. It means that on par 5s, you don't have to necessarily hit the most aggressive second shot. You can just put yourself in position for an easy up and down birdie. I think there are few golfers who can win a golf tournament by dominating in any specific category, and Rahm is somebody who can do that.
For sure. And he can make up for his bad, of one facet with another facet at any given day. So I think now is where the conversation starts. I think there's so many directions. I think there's 3 or 4 guys that would be the chalk here, right? If you asked just about anybody.
Yeah.
We haven't discussed this, so I'm not sure what direction you're going and if you're going to go that way or not.
So I'm going to go in a pretty interesting direction here. I'm actually going to Justin Thomas. And for anyone who's been following the last couple of weeks in DFS, I've called him the worst play on the slate in each of the last 2 weeks. Obviously, that has a lot to do with ownership. It has to do with our new GPP scores. If anyone hasn't read the ownership review that I put out yesterday, it's a free article. Go check that out. If you were even a little bit inclined to play Justin Thomas this week, that article is for you. But what I will say for JT, and specifically when it comes to this conversation, is JT can reach a point where, like Hideki, he can absolutely dominate a golf course with his short game. And so when you get onto these really difficult golf courses, major championships, think of the PGA Championship that he won. Think of the round at Sawgrass a couple years ago where it was so windy that they ended up taking like a day off or something like that. And there was the clear wave advantage. JT was the only big name to survive and contend from the wrong wave. And part of that is because he can shape the ball in any way that he wants. It was actually Tiger who once told him, you don't have enough shots to contend. And so what did he do? He developed all of the shots, and now he's willing to use them more than most. typically golfers, particularly the best in the world, have a shot shape that they like to play, and they will just play it ad nauseum. And honestly, I think that's probably the better way to do it for consistent success. But when JT is on, particularly in those extremely difficult conditions, he gets into this zone where like every hole for him is a birdie chance and everybody else is just struggling to make pars. That kind of separation from the field is pretty unique, and it's why I'm giving him the nod here, because I don't think anybody else really separates in one specific way like he does in this way on difficult courses.
That's interesting. That's not where I would have gone there. I definitely like when he's playing good, he's definitely an elite player. And it seems like he's turned it around after. I mean, obviously, I'm sure he's disappointed with the way he played this week. I'm not sure. Like I was saying earlier, the Tiger effect or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I think that I kind of am going to go a little bit off the wall here too, but for a little bit different reason. I would go Tony Finau here. And the reason, and this is going to be because of the Scotty Scheffler effect, right? So everybody talks about how bad Scotty putts it and how good he hits it. Well, this last week, Finau hit it better and putted worse. So, I mean, like if you thought that was I didn't think it was possible, but that's kind of how he's been lately, right? So I think that Tony Finau, and this is just talking about pure upside, right? We're not talking about necessarily week in and week out, just pure upside. He can hit those towering long iron shots that we talked to in high leverage situations. He can do the things that check the box. And the argument for Scheffler is like when he gets to making those 8 to 15 footers, he's a dominant player.
It's such a well-timed argument too, because he won the Mexico Open last year, gaining 4.3 true strokes per round. One of those numbers, it's very rare to see somebody gain over 4 in an event. Major championships are won with fewer than 4 strokes gained per round. So without question has that massive ceiling. It's also just a perfectly timed argument because in his last 3 events, he's gained 2.4, 1.9, and 1.2 strokes per round with the approach. He's gaining over a stroke per round off the tee, and he's losing about a stroke per round putting. So 100% with you there. The place where he falls so far short of Scotty is that he doesn't have the dominant short game that Scotty has, which is why Scotty is the guy tee to green that is just head and shoulders above everybody else, because he's just as good with his short game as he is off the tee with the irons. Around the green, it's like always the aspect of golf that I think people overlook the most. And it's especially true of Scotty Scheffler right now, where everyone knows how good he's hitting it. And everyone even mentions, he's dominant with his irons. He's dominant off the tee. He's dominant tee to green. And they never say he's also dominant with his short game.
Chipping, yeah.
But I like that call. I'm also going to go a little bit contrarian with my next one. Anyone who knows me knows how big of a fan I am of this guy. So this one at this point is a little bit of a hypothetical pick. Cameron Young, unbelievable off the tee. He gets super streaky at times with the irons where he can completely dominate a field with the irons like he did at the Genesis, by the way, gained 1.3 per round. He was atrocious around the greens at the Genesis. We haven't seen the fantastic ball striking week also coincide with a putting spike or a short game spike, and that's why he hasn't won. But eventually it's going to happen, and it's going to be pretty glorious. And I just think his ability to consistently dominate off the tee is at a level where very, very few players can even match him off the tee. It's pretty much Cameron Young, Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, and now maybe Ludwig Oberg as well in terms of just who is the best driver in the world. And they're in a tier of their own. Like nobody else is close to them. And I think we will also see, by the way, or I should say, we have also seen that he's one of those guys, like even in major championships, he's been able to ride that ball striking, particularly his driving on difficult courses, to contend. And he's done that without making the putts that he needs to make. So once he gets that fixed in one specific week, it's going to be quite the ceiling performance.
Yeah, and I think he has that in him too. He's I would say he's fairly new to the scene, right? He's not a Rory McIlroy that's been around forever, or some of these other guys. Like he's new to that elite scene, so when he figures it all out, he's got nothing but good things coming. I've got one more. There's a lot of guys that I could put in this conversation right here that I'm sure you'll touch on. One you just said with Oberg, I think he deservedly is in this conversation. Hideki, I think the top of Sam Burns deserves a spot in this conversation. But I think that right here, if we're just going to talk about elite, I would take Dustin Johnson. I think that people forget how dominant he really was and how dominant he can be. So I wouldn't be surprised. It looks like his problem is well known. He just doesn't take it serious anymore. I mean, he's just an incredible athlete that can still go play really good golf. When he was practicing and in his prime, and if he would ever do that again, I think he has elite talent.
I was wondering if you were going to go here because honestly, I think there's an argument to be made that he belongs at number 4 on this list. And if we were drafting this a year or two ago, there's a chance that he'd be number 1. His best in 21 or 22 is just unbelievable. In 2021, when he won the Masters, this was the November Masters, he gained 5.4 true strokes per round. Remember a minute ago when I said it's rare that a guy gains over 4 in a round? He gained 5.4 per round. Unbelievable ceiling. We haven't seen it in over a year, so I don't know if it's still there, but I got to think that it is. So I like this pick a lot. I'm also going to go to Liv here and say Cameron Smith. And I'm actually going to bring Cameron Smith and Hideki Matsuyama together because the thing that they both do incredibly well is their short game. I think the 3 guys on tour who can dominate a golf tournament with their short game alone are Cameron Smith, actually not on tour, but in the world of golf, Cameron Smith, Hideki Matsuyama, Justin Thomas are the only 3 who can win a golf tournament purely because their short game is what separates them that week. And with both Matsuyama and Cameron Smith, they also have the capability of getting hot with their irons. Everyone thinks of Matsuyama as this phenomenal ball striker. And yeah, he is a great ball striker, but the numbers show far and away his strength is around the green, just like Cam Smith. But when he's on, the irons can be great, just like they can be for Cam Smith. Both struggle to gain off the tee, and when they struggle, it's often because they're struggling with accuracy off the tee. Of course, with Cam Smith, the other element there is he can win a golf tournament with the putter like he did at the Open Championship. Matsuyama doesn't win as many golf tournaments with the putter, but we saw yesterday or on Sunday that he is capable of getting super hot for a single round and having that putter really shine for us a week. So I'm going to put both of them together. I think Cameron Smith probably deserves to be ahead of Matsuyama on the list, but man, Hideki's best is poetry as well. So he's got to be on this list.
Yeah, for sure. And once again, we're speaking of upside. I think when Cam Smith, I really like Cam, and he's another one that I just can't figure out where he's at right now. Is he just not taking it as serious? Is he going to be ready for Augusta? What he did that's so incredible is he learned to hit his irons way higher. And so therefore that's why he got to where he was competing at such stages where you had to hit it higher and spin the ball to get it to stop. Combine that with the best short game in the world, you're going to be pretty dominant. So he, I hope I'm really excited. I think what we've gained out of all this live stuff is we get these 4 events where we get to see them come together. These majors need to figure it out, and not, the world golf ranking stuff's a joke. And there needs to be a way to make sure that we get all the best players there. I'd hate to see one of these guys that deserve to play Augusta not get there because of, some rules.
Yeah, I think you mentioned not knowing where Cam Smith is with his game right now. I think one encouraging thing was he actually talked at the end of last season about the fact that he underestimated what it took to prepare for majors, and because of his move to live, he went into the Masters just totally unprepared. And so I like hearing the fact that he recognizes that about his season a year ago. We also saw him finish 4th in the US Open, 9th in the PGA Championship. So like as the season progressed, it was also like you saw, number one, he was just playing more because Liv started up again. But there was also an element of, okay, I was totally unprepared for the Masters. What can I do to prepare myself for the PGA Championship and the US Open, the final 2 majors of the season? So I like his chances starting out this year. And he's actually somebody that I've toyed with for a futures bet on the Masters. He's available at 22-1. I do like that number. I don't think it's a good enough number to fire a future on, but as we get closer and closer to that week, if he stays there, I can pretty much guarantee he'll be a bet of mine, and maybe we'll even get lucky and he'll go up to 25-30-1, something like that. So Cam Smith, definitely somebody that I like in the major season this year. I didn't like him last year.
Yeah. And backstory, he is an unbelievable human as well. So it makes it easy to root for. There's a guy that I'm good friends with that played on the PGA Tour, and Cam came over after the Colonial a few years ago. They were just having like a pool party. Mm-hmm. He played with my 2-year-old he's 8 now, so it's probably 6 years ago. He was either 2 or 3. But he literally played with him for like 3 hours, not like 10 minutes, like 3 hours. Awesome. He ran around the yard playing. And, I'm sure Cam doesn't even remember it. I mean, I guess maybe if I brought it up, but just the fact that he just was out there as a young kid himself, just playing on the PGA Tour and just running around with this little kid. And, my son doesn't know him from Adam, no idea who he is, but it's just a really cool to see, genuine good people. They're not looking for a limelight. They're not looking to do anything. They're just being good humans.
I love that. That's so great to hear. The final guy I'll mention is Patrick Cantlay. And it kind of gets to the fact that, like, if you look at the way he started some of the golf tournaments this season, including the Genesis, like through 2 rounds, he had played flawless golf. And I think the main reason why he belongs on this list is we talked about this a little bit with Rom, talking about how one of the ways that you get the highest ceiling is that you're capable of separating from the field in any specific category in any given week. If you look at the best players in the world and you look at which player has the best worst skill, so you're just you're looking at strokes gained per round, and you're looking at driving distance, driving accuracy, approach play, around the green play, and putting. The greatest weakness for all the players, the one with the greatest weakness, is Patrick Cantlay. He's just so good in every aspect of the game, and I think that contributes to why when he's on, it can be really, really special, just because you don't have to then have a ceiling performance in any one category, right? Like you can dominate by being very good in 5 categories just as easily, if not more easily, that you can in being spectacular in 2.
Yeah, and for me, I definitely overlook him. I'm terrible about it. DFS betting, it doesn't matter. He's just easy for me to not root for, if that makes sense. Like, I just don't have a desire. Like, I don't know what it is that he just doesn't move the needle for me as far as entertainment. That being said, he's an incredible player and he does a lot of things, and he kind of just reminds me of that guy that just goes out and does his business and then he goes back and you don't hear from him. He's not making headlines. He just goes out and plays golf and then goes back and takes care of everything else.
There are 2 guys that we have left off the list so far. I think one is a mistake and one that we need to correct and get him on this list somewhere, which is Victor Hovland. If you just look at what he was doing down the stretch last season, like, he was one of the best players, if not the single best player in the world at the end of the 2023 season. So I think 100% he needs to be on that list. Gained 4.8 strokes per round at the BMW, 4.9 at the Tour Championship. That's one of the most dominant 2-event stretches that I can recall ever seeing. I'm sure Tiger had bested that, but outside of that, like, I'm not sure anyone has gone over 4.5 2 consecutive events. Maybe DJ, actually. I would guess DJ did a few years ago. But he needs to be on that list. The other guy that is noticeable, Schauffele. Yeah, and I don't think that's a mistake, because I think what makes Schauffele incredible is how consistently very good to great he is, but never quite dominant.
Yeah, I mean, and you can make a case for Morikawa on the list too. He's not playing very good right now, but we've definitely seen that dominance out of him. And that honestly, that's where I thought the chalk was after we got done with the the top three. I thought the chalk picks right there would have been Morikawa, Schauffele, Cantlay, and Hovland, with Hovland probably the top of that list. I think that. Once again, I just see more going pure upside from a guy like Sam Burns over Morikawa. I just feel like Morikawa might have it more often, but Burns' best is better than Morikawa's.
Yeah, I agree. So, all right, before we wrap this up, let's try and turn this into an exact top 10. So I think we agree. Rory 1, Scotty 2, Rahm 3. I'm thinking Hovland deserves that 4th spot. What do you think?
I think probably you're probably right. Man, it's just so hard to get behind a guy that can skull a bunker shot at any given moment. Like he literally can just. I mean,
That's
could go
true,
out,
but when he's on, he's not sculling the bunker shot.
But you get my point. Like you just feel like it. You feel like the short game stuff is a ticking time bomb, even when he's playing his best.
Yeah,
it reminds me of the old Hunter Mahan when Hunter was just an elite dominant player, but he could literally chunk a chip out of nowhere.
Yep.
So, I mean, probably if he's doing everything correctly and he's not missing any greens anyway. So,
sure.
He has the ability to hit every shot.
I don't know. I think 5 for me would actually be Dustin Johnson.
I don't disagree at all. I think
so.
The problem is how serious is he? I think think that that's the only holdup with him is how serious he's taking everything.
And the reason why I would say that he's 5 is because I think you could put those first 4 in their own tier and say the best from anybody else doesn't touch them. DJ's the only one that could touch those guys. So he belongs in that tier as well, where Hovland and DJ are kind of their own like second tier behind the big 3. But then I think there's a big drop off, and I could go any direction, any order for the remaining guys.
I agree. I think that it's tier 1, and then the Hovland DJ tier 2. Then you've got the Schauffele Morikawa tier, and then you have all these young. I don't even want to call them young guys. All this next group of call it 10 that we could rattle through, and you and I are going to probably have a little bit of difference in opinion of who of what order those 10 are. But Oberg, Matsuyama, Burns, Finau, they're all going to you can pile them in. Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, you can just pile that group together, and whose best is better than others. I don't think that you really Cam Young. Sorry, I don't know how I forgot him out of that. But that whole tier right there is just kind of. I wouldn't. Would you be surprised if we have this conversation? Let's say after the last major this year, and Oberg's not in that, at least that Hovland DJ tier.
I think both Cam Young and Oberg could be 4 on that list at that time.
Yeah, so I lean towards Oberg there, but over Cam Young a little bit. I think he's more rounded player, personally, like just more well-rounded all the way around. But and he's a little. I think he's probably a little bit younger too. He's a little bit more fresh to the scene, so he's still learning a little bit more. I think he has. I don't know if he can ever be in that top tier with Rory, Scheffler, where you could see DJ getting into that tier, right? I don't think you can make that argument with him yet, but I definitely can see him in that Hovland area.
Yeah, without question. I mean, I think you can make the case that Oberg's ahead of schedule. Like he's better than Scotty was at this time of Scotty's career, I would say. But Scotty also made this like all-time great jump from where he was then to where he is now. So you certainly can't predict that for anybody else. For me, like after the top 5, I think on really difficult golf courses, I think I'd probably put JT next, especially difficult conditions. And if it's not difficult, then JT's at the end of that list for me, where I think I'd probably put Cam Smith and Cam Young next, Oberg in that same area. But yeah, I think we did a pretty good job covering the best of when they're on, how good are they? So it's time to move into the Mexico Open. We're not going to spend too much time here. Talk a little bit of course fit, maybe give out an outright or two, and then talk through one and done. We will be done with the show as well. So course fit wise, this is actually a really, really interesting one. We only have 2 years of data here, so it's not the most reliable, but when you get percentages like this, you know that directionally, at the very least, they matter. We have driving distance 197% more predictive than usual on this golf course. I think there's a couple elements here. Number one, it's a really long golf course. It's at sea level. The layout just also benefits distance. There's also, I think, a correlation here between how far you can hit the ball and how good you are with your long irons. There's a ton of long iron approach shots on this golf course. So driving distance, far and away the most important thing on the golf course. Around the green play, barely matters at all. Putting also matters a ton, which kind of lends to the fact that, as long as it's a pretty easy golf course. So no surprise to see distance and putting. Approach play pretty much neutral, and driving accuracy pretty much neutral. Anything here surprise you, Justin?
No, I mean, it's a resort golf course, right? I mean, that's just what it is. It's built to be a resort golf course. So when you play a PGA Tour event on a resort, you're just going to struggle to make it hard enough. That's just, I mean, you're going to need wind, and you're going to need some elements to make it any difficult. I mean, pretty much anytime the PGA Tour goes to either Mexico or anywhere like that, it's always at resort golf courses, except for Chapultepec. They played in Mexico City, which is an actual very high-end country club right there in the middle of the city. So that's why you see so many low scores, I think, in all these events, and they all end up kind of the same.
By the way, this has no real relevance on course fit, but did you know the designer of this course is Greg Norman?
I did not know that.
Kind of designed a bunch of courses, but
yeah, he designed a bunch. He had a little stint there where he designed a bunch of golf courses in Mexico. He did there was the one down there, the very south tip of Cabo that he did. He did 9 holes, and then like Nicholas or somebody did 9 holes. You want to talk about two opposite 9 holes of golf? Like one's like beachside and one's in the mountains.
Yeah, there are actually a number of Norman courses. I've played a few. I've liked every single Norman course that I've played. I think he does a pretty good job. And I'd also say you can kind of tell he designs golf courses to his strengths as a player. So it's also no surprise there that we see such an edge on driving here as a whole, and especially on distance. Do you believe any of these reports that the rough is up a little bit higher? I saw something that it's 2.5 to 3 inches. Do you believe any of that, or do you think that's going to matter? I certainly believe it. I don't have any reason not to believe it. I don't think it'll change much. Maybe it adds a little bit of around the green signal, but that would still be down. These fairways are super wide, so it's not going to come into play a ton. I think maybe it comes into play more around the greens, which could actually then take away some signal too. So it's tough. I don't think it's going to factor much. I certainly think the thing that's going to be true is if you are attacking players who are long off the tee, especially if they're also accurate, and guys who can make putts, you're going to be set up pretty well this week.
Do you think Finau will be the chalkiest one and done of the year?
Yes.
This week?
Without question. I think he will be 30%, something like that, maybe even higher in one and done. We haven't really seen anyone get over 15% so far this year. So I think he might be not just the most popular to this point in the season, but also the most popular in any week going forward.
That's my point. I think that he might be the chalkiest pick of the entire year.
I think the only time we might see someone get close to that is either Rahm or Brooks at a major, when everyone is using the same strategy of using live guys in those 4 events.
Yeah, how did we not? We literally didn't mention Brooks Koepka at all either in our conversation, which maybe is a little bit just because of what he does on the biggest stage.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one because his best is when we see him in majors, right? Like it's not, he gets in this zone. He just finds a way in those majors. So he doesn't really pop in that thought for me, and I don't think it's a mistake, as great as he is in those events.
Yeah, I just I always think if you're going to play your best, it's always going to be at the biggest moments, and it seems like that's when he's at. So that's going to go back to give me a guy with the killer instinct over the guy that like Cantlay that just goes out there and plays good. So anyway, back on topic here. I definitely want to find a guy outside of Finau to play this week. I've got a few. And the first one that comes to mind would be Hojgaard. I think that you're never going to regret not using him somewhere else. He checks the boxes of hitting it far. I still think that the problem I'm going to have is I think he might be the second most popular pick this week.
So I love this call. He's number one in our expected strokes gain metric this week, and number one by a mile in our course fit expected strokes gain number this week. Gaining over a third of a stroke per round with driving distance, gaining over a third of a stroke per round against this field, putting. That's the recipe for success. He just nails it to a T. I do agree that there is concern about his ownership. I'm not sure how much we should care because I think Finau's will keep his in check. And it's not like Hojgaard is separating in the odds board from the rest of the pack the way that Tony is. The other guy for me, and the guy who's actually right behind Hojgaard, where they are 1 and 2 in both expected strokes gained and course fit expected strokes gained. Finau's third is Keith Mitchell, another guy just phenomenal off the tee. I would say he's the best driver in this field. He is tied for the longest at 0.39 strokes gained per round. He's also one of the most accurate at 0.4 strokes gained per round with his driving accuracy. Not quite the putter that Hojgaard is, but it's also not a weakness. He gains 0.11 per round to this field. So Mitchell also checks every box. Both of those guys are 5.3% to win in our simulations. Only Finau is ahead at 6.7%. So I think for me, it's between Hojgaard and Mitchell, and I wouldn't really consider anybody else.
I have one more that's kind of off the wall, and this is going to be back to kind of where you're more stats and analytical to where just the eye test and kind of what have you done lately. And that's Davis Thompson. He hits it really far and he putts the eyes out of it. So I think that if you wanted to get somebody that, would you be surprised if we were the only one to pick him? Like, you know what I mean? Like he's not a household name yet. I think that he's going to be one of those guys that at some point we're going to talk about being in that his best is his best in the top 20 best in the country.
I think that's a fair point. I think you could also put Jake Knapp in that same context then, like if you're just trying to get somebody that's 1% and has a chance to really break through here for the first time. My thought here is that outside of Finau, there's nobody in this field that if we take this week, we're going to think in another week, oh, I really wish we still had that guy available. So for me, like I just want to stay at somebody who has a better chance to win, a better chance to contend, which is why I lean between Hojgaard and Mitchell. But I do think it's a fair point on Thompson. If we wanted that like 0.1% victory, that certainly could be a way to go. It will also depend on what the DFS ownership looks like. We don't have that yet, but we can learn a lot from that. Like if when I run that, I see Thompson being 20% and Mitchell being 10%. Now we might even think, you know what, Mitchell might be the lower owned and one and done as well, in which case it becomes a much easier decision. But maybe Thompson will be at like 3%. Mitchell and Hojgaard will both be 25 to 30. And it's like, all right, maybe we do need to get off the board. So maybe we reserve this decision for when we have a better sense of what ownership will look like. But I think we've got some good options this week.
I think it'll take a lot for us to be off Hojgaard. Like it would have to be something silly. In my opinion, I just think that the upside that you get from him winning here is going to be hard to pass.
Mitchell, by the way, is my favorite outright of the week, 28-1 on Bet365. I took the each way as well because we've got him at 17.7% to finish in the top 5. Only Hojgaard is better. Basically, like Hojgaard and Mitchell are almost neck and neck across the board in our simulated probabilities. But Mitchell is, let's see what his numbers are at now. He's still 28. So he's down to 25-1 now, which I do still like. And then we get Hojgaard all the way down at 16-1. So just a bigger split between the two in the market than I'm seeing, which is why I like the Mitchell outright more. But man, when it comes to the one and done, if we don't believe that Højgaard is going to be super popular, I think he'd be my top choice.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we'll kind of wait and see, but I would, unlike other weeks, I think that this is going to be a little bit easier decision for us to make.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And if you want, you can absolutely throw some of your own, best of the best discussion in the comments. Let us know, who did we leave off our list? Who did we have too high on the list? We want all those thoughts. Thanks again for tuning in. We will catch you next time.